Hello, you beautiful people. Today we are back with another episode of Keep, Trade, or Drop. This is a series where we go through and talk about some of the most popularly requested players on your fantasy teams and whether I think you should keep them, whether you should trade them away, and then for guys that are more waiver wire level, talk about whether I think you should keep them or drop them to the waiver wires. So this is going to be for week 15 of the NBA fantasy season. And as always, don't forget to drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and join the Discord through the link in the description if you have any fantasy or NBA questions. Really great community in there. Definitely recommend checking it out. And with that being said, let's just go ahead and get started. Alright, so as you can probably tell by the thumbnail, the first player I want to talk about is Anthony Simmons of the Portland Trail Blazers. And if you weren't aware by now, for some reason, if you've been living under a rock, he's absolutely must roster in every format across every league, whether it be 6-team, 8-team, 10-team, does not matter. Belongs on a roster, 100%. But yeah, we're just going to go ahead and talk about what I think you should do with him. So he's pretty much just filled in the role that Damian Lillard had on the Blazers, like pretty much to a T. He's playing like 38 minutes a game. And I don't think you should trade him away if you have him on your fantasy team. I am going to say that I think you should keep Anthony Simmons, and just hear me out as to why. So I know a reason that people would think about selling him is that Norman Powell's coming back into the lineups soon, but I honestly don't think Powell's going to hurt Simmons' value that much. He's been their primary creator off the ball just because of like CJ being out working his way back into the lineup. Or I said off the ball, I mean he's been this primary creator with the ball in his hands. And I don't see him averaging any less than like 38 fantasy points per game from here on out, like for the rest of the season. He's just an absolutely electric scorer. And the main reason that we're seeing such an increase is because of the minutes increase, of course. But obviously he's increased his assists per game as well. He's averaging around 7 assists ever since Dame's been out. And I mean, he's put up some crazy fantasy stat lines. Like he had 51 fantasy points against Miami, 64 against Washington, 70 against Atlanta, 55 against Miami. Like the kid can just flat out play. It's crazy, man. He's just been such a consistent all around like 3-level threat from for scoring. And then when you put that together with like the increase in assist numbers, you're just looking at like a top 40 fantasy player. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch or a bit of a hyperbole, but I honestly think he's going to have top 40 value from here on out. So I don't think you should trade him away if he's on your team, because if we look at recent trades involving him, he has not been valued as highly as I think he should be. And like I already mentioned, I think that's just because of the looming Powell return. Yeah, even with that, I don't think you should panic and trade Anthony Simmons right now. I think his value is just going to continue to increase when people see like how consistent he can be. And then if you want to trade him, then go ahead by all means. But yeah, I just wouldn't trade him purely on the basis that you think his value is going to decrease when Powell returns. And I guess I should just briefly mention, maybe you're worried like Damian Lillard's going to come back at the end of his 6 weeks evaluation or whatever. Personally, don't get me wrong, there's not a lot of basis to back this up. I don't have any like secret sources or anything, but I'm pretty strongly on the side that I don't think Damian Lillard's going to play again this season. I just don't really see the incentive for Portland to rush him back, especially if he's been dealing with this injury for a long time. I feel like they're just going to give him as much rest as possible. We all know Portland doesn't really have a shot at the title this season, even if Dame's playing. So yeah, I just don't really see them rushing him back, and I can't really see why they would play him this season. It just doesn't make a lot of sense from a franchise perspective. So yeah, that's going to do it for Anthony Simmons. Hopefully that explains my reasoning a little bit. Portland's just looking rough, man. They've been dealing with so many injuries this season, and now Dame's out as well. Terrible scene. I already made a video talking about why I think you should trade for CJ McCollum. Still stand by that. I think CJ is going to put up around 40 fantasy points per game too. I think he is going to be better than Simmons, but I honestly think these two are going to have a little bit closer of a race in terms of their fantasy value than a lot of people are willing to give Simmons credit for. Yeah, he's only rostered in 50% of leagues right now. That should honestly be up around 90. I'm not even exaggerating. This guy is that good for fantasy. So definitely pick him up. I would keep him on your teams for right now if you were lucky enough to grab him before Dame went out. Props to you, because this is a guy that'll probably end up winning you your league, or at least taking you to the next level. Like if you weren't the best team in your league, it's pickups like this that'll really help you come playoff time, like in terms of winning it all. So props if you got him on your team. I just keep him for now. Enjoy the ride. Don't see any rush in trading him. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get on to the next player. Actually, I should preface by saying, obviously, if you get a crazy offer for him, like if you get like a top 30 guy or something, go ahead and take it. None of these are like set in stone. Never trade them under any circumstance. If you get a fucking good deal, then you got to take it. So anyway, that should clarify that a little bit. But let's just go ahead and get on to the next player. All right, so second, we're just going to talk about the shit show that is the Indiana Pacers as like a totality. So I'm going to talk about mainly Miles Turner, Malcolm Brogdon, and Domantas Sabonis. Maybe we'll throw in Karis LeVert. Might as well cover most of their starters. But yeah, just before we begin, this isn't a waiver wire pickup section or anything, but I just want to make sure this is clear. Like, if Duarte's on your waiver wire, I would definitely pick him up. Same with Goga, Justin Holiday, Torrey Craig for like the deeper leagues. Definitely worth taking a look at these guys over the next coming days and maybe even the next few weeks, depending on like the severity of some of these injuries. But yeah, Duarte, absolutely consider a must roster right now. I think he's going to put up some very high scoring numbers. Same with Justin Holiday. He's been consistently solid. He's not going to be, he doesn't have as high an upside as Duarte in my opinion, but I do think he could still contribute some solid fantasy value. And then Goga, I mean, per minute, he's been a solid contributor. And then lastly, Torrey Craig, just when he gets like 30 plus minutes a game, he's put up some okay stat lines. So that one's definitely for the deeper leagues, but just something to be aware of. But anyways, talking about the main guys that are going to be like, I think you should keep, trade, or drop them? We'll sort of go one by one. I'll try not to spend too much time, but whenever I say that, I just talk about them forever. So we'll start off with Miles Turner. He's someone that I'm definitely on the side of trading away right now. Pacers saying he has a stress reaction in his left foot and will be re-examined in 2 weeks. That's the most recent report on ESPN. And I mean, I made a video earlier where I talked about I wasn't sure how severe this injury actually was, or if the Pacers just wanted to keep him out for the trade deadline, because there is a sort of a common trend where players will get like phantom injuries and then they're going to sit out, and they more than likely are going to get moved to another team. But I don't really like to speculate too much on the trade deadline because it's just so hard to predict, because you don't know for sure where teams are going to go or what teams are going to do. Seems like every trade deadline, Indiana's like thinking of making big moves and then nothing happens, or we don't really know. So I don't try to put too much stock into it until there's like a finalized report that he's going to be on the move. But for Miles Turner, man, if he's going to be missing these 2 weeks, I feel like he's going to get moved. Like, that sort of goes against what I just said, but hear me out. Yeah, I just don't want to deal with the stress reaction in his foot. His value has been sort of coming down for the entire season. He started at around 40 fantasy points per game for like the first month or so there, I believe. But ever since then, he's just sort of been coming back to earth, which I did predict. I didn't think his production was that sustainable. The blocks are crazy. I mean, he's been leading the league in that. I didn't think that was going to change, but his shooting splits were very high. His points per game was a lot higher than I thought it would be for the year. And he's just not that great of a rebounder for a center. It's mainly because Sabonis is grabbing them all. But yeah, just with him not being back in the lineup, maybe going to be moved to another team, and just all the uncertainty, I am on the side of trying to trade Miles Turner, if you can get a good deal for him. Like I said, if there's not something out there for him, then you're probably going to be stuck with him. But like I said, if we just look at some recent trades involving him, I mean, he was traded for Evan Fournier and Ivica Zubac. I think that's a pretty trash trade. Like, I would definitely rather keep Miles Turner in that situation. So yeah, just it depends how comfortable you are dealing with the uncertainty. Of a few 1-for-1 trades where he was traded for Gordon Hayward and Mikal Bridges, I would probably take him over Mikal Bridges in a points league. And then Gordon Hayward, I would probably honestly prefer Hayward at this point in time. And who knows, maybe Miles Turner will come back fully healthy and then make me look like an idiot post-trade deadline if he gets moved to another team, or even if he stays in Indiana. But yeah, just all this uncertainty right now, I just really would not want to have Miles Turner on my fantasy team if I could help it, and especially if I could get a good deal. So I think if you could get any player that's averaging around 35 fantasy points per game on the season, I'd probably recommend taking that deal, or at least looking into it, just so you don't have to deal with Miles Turner and all that shit. So there we go again. I said I wasn't going to talk about them for a long time, and then I just wasted 3 minutes of your life probably talking about Miles Turner. But Domantas Sabonis, I'm going to keep him. There just haven't been enough reports. They just said that he's going to miss a few games. We don't know the severity of that injury, and that wasn't like a phantom one like we witnessed it in the Lakers game, and he played through the rest. But I mean, if you've ever sprained an ankle, you know how it is. You get the adrenaline rush, and then the next day, or even after the game, you can't really walk on it. So remains to be seen. But for such a solid player, and for how much upside he has, if the rest of the Pacers get shook up, or even if he gets moved to another team, I think his opportunities could increase. I'm definitely going to keep Domantas Sabonis. I'm not trading him away right now. I'm just going to hold out and wait on more reports and more news. And then Malcolm Brogdon, since the beginning of the season, man, he's just been a trade away. Whenever he plays, like, just move him. It's just not worth having. He cannot stay healthy for the life of him this season. He's sitting out for 10 more days right now to deal with the Achilles injury that's been plaguing him throughout the year. It's just a rough scene, man. Indiana is just going downhill. All of their players are hurt. I would probably just take whatever good players you can get for Malcolm Brogdon at this point, whether that be like a top 50 guy, a top 60 guy. It really is league dependent, because he is a solid player, but yeah, you just can't really afford how many games he's missing. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, definitely try to trade away Malcolm Brogdon. Karis LeVert, I'm just going to keep for now. I have him in a few of my leagues. I put him on a buy low video earlier in the year. He's definitely raised his production to the levels that I was expecting, and then surpassed them as well. So definitely keep Karis LeVert if he's on your team. Keep Sabonis for now, and then I would trade away Miles Turner and Malcolm Brogdon if you can get a good return. Alright, so next up is someone that I literally just talked about as a buy low option, and I stand by it. It's Jayson Tatum. I'm not going to talk about him for too long. People just ask me in the Discord whether they think Jayson Tatum is a keep or trade kind of guy. He's absolutely a keep in my opinion. This would be a terrible time to trade Jayson Tatum away. I don't think you're going to get very good value. Everyone's just going to be trying to rip you off. He's missed like 20 of his last 3-point attempts or some shit like that, or he's like 1 for 22 or something. I don't know. I've just been seeing it all over Twitter. I've just been purposely choosing to ignore it because the Celtics. Oh man, I don't want to talk about the Celtics right now. It's just been painful. If you're a Celtics fan, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, that's not going to continue. He's a career 38% three-point shooter. He just cannot hit a shot for the life of him right now, and I don't expect that trend to continue. It's going to turn around, and when it does, we're going to see his fantasy value shoot up. He's been playing really well the past few games outside of shooting threes, which is kind of something that I think a lot of people are overlooking. Like, even with these shooting woes, he's still been averaging around like 23-ish fantasy, like 23 points per game. And on the season, he's putting up 25, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. And yeah, he was playing a bit of point guard against Portland, which was nice to see. He put up 7 assists. And the team was like playing well when he was at the point guard, so I would expect Ime Udoka to probably try him there more in the future. But I mean, he has not shown the great coaching style that we were hoping for when we brought him into the team. So yeah, Jayson Tatum, anyway, back on topic. Jayson Tatum, I was just rambling because I didn't really think this one was that controversial or that hard of a thing to talk about. Jayson Tatum is absolutely a keep. Do not trade him away. If he's not on your team, perfect opportunity to buy low on him. I feel like some people at this point might panic on him. Personally, I'm telling you guys that I would not. I would just wait it out. But there have been a lot of trades involving him recently. So I'll just go ahead and list you some of them. He was traded in a 1-for-1 for Anthony Edwards. I would take Tatum over Edwards. 1-for-1 for Ja. Okay, I'd take Ja in that situation. A lot of these are just clown league trades where people just make stupid trades just so they end up on the recent trades app. But yeah, if you can get him, go for it. If he's on your team, just keep him, man. I promise he's going to bounce back or at least do better than what he's currently performing at, so I really wouldn't be that worried about him. Alright, this one's just for the more casual leagues because someone asked whether they should keep or trade Kyrie Irving. That answer is literally always going to be trade. Whenever he does well, just move him. I mean, there's a huge range in what people are getting in return for him. Somebody traded him 1-for-1 for Jonas Valanciunas. That is just idiotic. Like, I know Kyrie's had 3 good games in a row here because Brooklyn just happened to have 3 away games this week. But he's missing half of their games from here on out pretty much. Doesn't have a good schedule in playoffs because he's not going to be playing in home games. Just trade him for whatever you can get, honestly. If they're like a top 100 player, why not? Kyrie is going to put up good fantasy numbers when he plays. As we can see, evidenced by this week, he put up 56, 50, and 37. But it's just like, if he has one dud, like, then you're just screwed. Like, last week he had a 16-point fantasy game, and he only played 2 games that week. So it's like, if he puts one of those up, then you're better off just having a streaming spot, honestly. Don't get me wrong, I don't think you should drop him to waivers because he probably does have some trade value. But like in another one here, he was traded for Drew Holiday. I much prefer to have Drew. He was traded for Kobe White. With these injuries to the Bulls, I would definitely take Kobe White over Kyrie right now. And then, yeah, I think that's going to do it. Hopefully that gives you guys an idea. He was traded 1-for-1 for Cade Cunningham. Like, that's just fucking stupid, too. I would take Cade 100%. So this one is more for the people that are new to fantasy and aren't really too aware. He's missing half the games. Just move him off your team. It's whenever you can. Just if you can get a top 100 player or a top 80 player, I'm just going to take it. I don't really like dealing with Kyrie. I only have him in one of my leagues. And it's just a pain in the ass because every week I'm just like, man, I probably would have got more points if I just streamed him, like looking forward. So remains to be seen what I'll do there. It is an 8-team league for context, but yeah, definitely try to trade Kyrie Irving. All right, and the last player I want to talk about is Chris Boucher, and he is someone that for some reason Nick Nurse just does not like to play if they're fully healthy, and the only reason he's been putting up really solid numbers is due to all of the injuries that the Raptors had. Right now, Birch has been out for like 10 to 14 days with a nose injury, and I feel like once he comes back, we're going to see Boucher's value start to decrease again. He's rostered in like 63.7% of leagues, and for the foreseeable future when Birch is out, definitely keep him. Like, don't drop him to your waiver wire in an 8-team or anything, but I would definitely try to trade him away because if we look at the last stretch of games where him and Birch were both in the lineup and active, it was between like January 1st to like the 11th, and in that time frame, Boucher only cracked 30 fantasy points twice, and I mean, ever since then, he's put it up. He's averaged like way over 30 fantasy points per game. He's had a few 40-point fantasy games and shit. So yeah, it's just I don't really think the minutes are going to be there for him. He's been playing like 32 and a half minutes per game, and on the season he only plays around 20 when the Raptors are fully healthy. So this is just a sell high time on Chris Boucher, honestly. Just a shut close Ks. It's pretty easy to tell that it's a sell high opportunity. You're probably not going to be able to get a lot for him. A recent trade that went down involving him was for Marcus Morris Sr., and I do think I would take Marcus Morris in that situation. If you could get Marcus for him, I think that's a good trade just because he has more value that's not as contingent on absences as Boucher's is. But yeah, who knows? Maybe this will be the time when, Nick Nurse stops playing around and actually starts giving him consistent minutes. But I just sincerely doubt it. I don't really see that happening, and I would probably just prefer to have Marcus Morris over him. I don't really understand why Boucher is rostered in so many leagues. He was rated very highly by ESPN at the start of the year. I think his average, like they ranked him in like the 70s or something. Chris Boucher is not a top 70 fantasy player, and he will not be for the rest of this season. So yeah, definitely look at moving him away while you can. If you can, that is. And I mean, if not, just enjoy it for the 2 weeks, and then just be aware that his value is going to start coming down soon. All right, so now we're on to the keep or drop section, and this is guys that I'm more sort of concerned about whether you should keep them on your team or whether you should be okay letting them go to the waiver wire. Obviously, always try to trade for people first if you can, but these are guys that I would also just be comfortable with if you can't find a good deal, just dropping them to waivers. But yeah, first up on the list is going to be Zion Williamson, and he's someone that I always get asked about whether I think they should keep him or not, and this is just such a contingent situation to me. It's very league dependent. It depends on how many IR spots you have, what position you're in your league, how many teams are in your league, etc. Because like if you're in an 8 team and you have 3 IR spots, just keep Zion. Like why not? You've already held him for this long. If he's on your waiver wire, he's probably going to get picked up. But then it's like if you're in last place in your league, you don't have that many IR spots or Zion's hogging one of them, then I think you just sort of have to cut ties with him at this point. There just have been no positive news concerning his injury, his return date, anything like that. So if you're not in a playoff position right now, or you're fighting to make the playoff position, you have other guys that are hurt, and he's clogging up an IR spot, I think you got to do what you got to do at this point and just drop him. But like I mentioned, if you're pretty confident you're going to make it, you don't have, like, you're probably, like, guaranteed a playoff spot at least, or, like, you're pretty confident in your team, you might as well just hold on to him if it's in an IR spot and it's not hurting anybody. But as soon as it starts to become an issue, if you start losing matchups, a lot of your other players start going down, I wouldn't really hesitate to drop him, because at this point, like, he is probably going to get picked up by someone else, but you just can't afford it. It's more important to make the playoffs than have the potential of Zion coming back and saving you. But it, like I said, until there's some solid reports, who knows? I mean, all it takes is one report where they're like, oh, he's coming back in a week or something. But it just doesn't seem like that's going to be happening. It's been a very murky and unclear situation. So unless I'm guaranteed a playoff spot or have multiple IR spots and I don't have anyone else on my team that's hurt or that needs to go in the IR, I'm probably just going to keep Zion. And then if you're not in one of those situations that I mentioned, I would just go ahead and drop him right now. It's just been too long, too tedious of a process. It's just been too many games missed, not enough news. I wouldn't really hesitate to drop him at this point if I wasn't going to make the playoffs. So that's going to do it for him. Next up on my list is someone who just got back and then decided, or not decided, and then Grayson Allen's dirty ass just fucking took him out right again. Alex Caruso out with a wrist injury now. Going to be reevaluated in 6 to 8 weeks. As much as I hate to say it, I would just go ahead and drop the Caruso now. If we look at the NBA season, a lot of your guys' playoffs are going to be in like the March 20th to April 3rd probably range. And if we look at that, I mean, that's only how many weeks away? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like, he's going to be coming back at best in the middle of playoffs. And that's for his reevaluation. So there's really no guarantee. And I mean, you're going to be holding him in your IR for that long. And it's Alex Caruso. Like, in a points league, he's not really putting up enough numbers for me to justify keeping him there for that many games that he's going to be missing. I wouldn't really hesitate to just go ahead and drop him to waivers right now. It really sucks because, you know, he was putting up some solid numbers in the steals department all around. He's more of a category league player where he had more value. So if you have an IR spot for him in a category league and you need the steals, then maybe. But yeah, any other situation, like, I'm probably just going to go ahead and drop him, use his spot to stream players. You're just going to get a lot more value that way. I don't really have him as a must roster given the current injury status. So yeah, hate to see it, man. The Bulls are sort of falling apart from injuries right now. It's really shitty. Hopefully everything turns around and they get all healthy come playoff time. But for now, just go ahead and drop Alex Caruso. I don't really think you need to keep him. And this is one that I don't really understand why he's rostered in so many leagues, and it's going to be Keldon Johnson. So the only reason I'm talking about him is because I noticed he's rostered in 65% of leagues, which I don't really understand because, like, if I'm in an 8 or 10 team, I'm perfectly fine dropping Keldon to waivers. At the start of the year, I said he could be a sleeper that would help your fantasy team. Turns out DeJounte Murray was just going to turn into a god. Keldon Johnson's been completely below average. Definitely not someone I consider must roster at all in 8 to 10 team leagues. In a 12 team and up, I mean, waivers aren't that great, so you might as well keep him. But if you're in an 8 to 10 team, I don't know why you would still be holding Keldon Johnson at this point. And if you considering he's rostered in 65% of leagues, I assume that is the case for some of you. So I wouldn't hesitate to just stream him, man. He's just not giving up great returns in value. His game's been pretty one-dimensional, just relying on scoring, and he's only averaging like 14 points per game, so definitely not a lot of fantasy value there. And then next up, these are guys that are more for short term. There's going to be Terrence Davis. He is a very solid player on the Sacramento Kings. If you're a Raps fan, you know what I'm talking about. He was there for you guys, putting up numbers, and then there was a little incident off the court, and they had to move him. Yeah, Terrence Davis is someone who can fill it up in a hurry. Very solid player, and I know there was risk, like worried that like he's gonna lose his value and go back to being a little bit below average because Halliburton came back in the lineup, and now like Fox was a late scratch for their game today, so it looks like he's still starting, putting up some solid numbers right now against Milwaukee at the time I'm recording this. He's got 22, 7, and 3 for 36 fantasy points. So I would just definitely go ahead and pick up Terrence Davis, and I would just keep him right now. I think Sacramento only has 3 games this up and coming game week, but I think if you picked up Terrence Davis, I would just keep him and stream him for those games. We don't know the severity of Fox's injury. Maybe he'll be back, but even then, you're probably going to get around 30 fantasy points from Terrence Davis. He's just sort of one of those players that like if he gets hot, he's going to put up some good scoring numbers, and he's on a good stretch right now. So definitely go ahead and keep Terrence Davis. I wouldn't recommend dropping him to waivers for now. And then the last player I want to talk about is the cum bucket, Jonathan Kuminga. Draymond is still out for like another week and a half, I think, or so. And Kuminga's minutes have been a bit lower than they were or like originally when Draymond went down because he stopped starting. They started Otto Porter or Iguodala in his place. Well, I mean, they didn't start Iguodala, but you know what I mean. They're cutting into his minutes. So he only got 15 minutes the last 2 games. And he is someone that I think the name is overhyping like what he's actually going to be producing for a fantasy team. Because like he had the one solid game against Chicago, and then outside of that, he hasn't cracked 25 fantasy points. And long term, if we're looking at prospects, definitely in the future he's going to be a very solid player. Don't get me wrong, I'm not shitting on his potential or anything. I think he is going to be a solid fantasy player, just not this season, man. When Draymond gets back, I don't really think his value, I think I would just drop him. So for now, definitely don't consider him must roster. His roster percentage is shot up just because everyone's like, oh man, rookie doing well, like we got to take him. I'm not that high on Kuminga right now. I'm perfectly comfortable dropping him and using his spot for a streaming spot. The Warriors also only have 3 games next week, so it's not like he's someone that you really need to have as a must roster. I'm very comfortable just letting him be a streamer instead. So yeah, hopefully that clears it up for him. Obviously, if you can get trades for any of these guys that you think are upgrades, then by all means go for it. I'm just talking about in general right now. Not that worried about it. Kuminga is someone that I'm like, yeah, maybe as a flyer, but definitely not must roster. I would probably drop him in most leagues now that the minutes are back down to like below 20 minutes per game. Just not really worth your time. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Sorry it's a bit all over the place. I'm tired, give me a break, boys. But yeah, hopefully this helped you guys out a little bit. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.